decisions in terms of investments in our transport network to provide for that future on a very long-term platform. But the other main driver, just before we kick off, is the government policy statement, which ultimately the Land Transport Plan is a funding bid for funding from Wellington, and we need to align with that government policy statement, which has a big emphasis on better transport choices, on safety, on freight, and on climate change. All right, so we are no longer in the same situation, normal paradigm of rolling out yesterday's solutions to tomorrow's problems. Something needs to give, and we need to be very inventive about and innovative about how we ensure we can all get round the region and live productive lives in the future in that context. I won't say any more, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood there was quite a backstory to the plan before it even was released for this stage of the process. All right, Mrs. Smith.
Apologies, sorry.
Apologies. Yes, I guess we best record those. Have we had some apologies received?
Yes, from Councillor Keith Price, Mayors Kirsten Wise and Sandra Hazelhurst, and Mayor Alex Walker will be late, and Emma Spate from NZTA.
All right, well, we nevertheless have a quorum. Would anyone like to move that those apologies be received? Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Thank you, Api. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? All right, the apologies are received. Is there anything else we need to do in a preliminary way or of that nature before we hear from Mrs. Smith? Now, Mrs. Smith, Sonia, how you prefer to be addressed? If you'd like to come up and sit up here so that we can hear you clearly. And I think, oh, there is a PowerPoint, is there? So what we'll do is our hearing staff will run a timer so that we can make sure that everyone gets a fair opportunity to speak in an equitable way over the course of the afternoon. While we're getting this submission loaded. Now, if I could just assist the committee.
Yep, that's correct.
Mrs. Smith is submitter 53, and her written submission is on page 233 of the bundle that we've got.
Kia ora tātou. My name's Sonia Smith. I'm the Wairoa Hospital Health Centre Manager who works for Hawke's Bay DHB.
Excuse me, Sonia, can I just get you to either sit closer to the microphone or pull it closer to you?
Kia ora anō. My name's Sonia Smith. I'm the Wairoa Hospital Health Centre Manager for Hawke's Bay DHB. Born and bred in Wairoa, and very happy to be living back there. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. Unfortunately, the submission process had my submission down as an E-Tank submission initially, and therefore in the first round of presentations I was scheduled to speak but had no notification, so embarrassingly my name was called and I was a no-show, so I'm privileged to be back. So
Apologies for that.
I thank Regional Council for addressing that. The current draft plan has a great emphasis on industries such as port traffic and also urban recreation. I'm here to present a health and social picture for now and also going forward that determines what the priorities should be based on regional equity. So current transport barriers, nearly all of the district in quintile 5 and decile 10 on deprivation index. We pay more for fuel and other consumables than the rest of Hawke's Bay. So that's who we are. We draw less tax and revenue from heavy traffic. Currently the Wairoa District Council do not rate for public transport, so we have no public transport schemes, and neither can we apply for NZTA subsidy around certain things. So the only public transport currently is funded by Hawke's Bay DHB. That's a hospital bus that runs 5 days a week outside of statutory holidays from Wairoa to Napier, sometimes to Royston and then on to Hastings Hospital. And also funded by the PHO is the St John's bus, which does some local transport. I believe they're engaging with the Regional Council now around potential for subsidy, which is good. We have no all-weather airport, so that's a real challenge for emergency transfers in bad weather. So we'd like to think that if something goes wrong, you always get a flight out of town. But if you can't see those hills surrounding Wairoa, you cannot fly. So that's why we're more dependent on the road. So health and wellbeing. What I know is Wairoa mums travel an estimated 200,000 kilometres a year to access ultrasound. That's despite having a ultrasound clinic once a month in Wairoa, which we can't increase because sonographers are rare as hen's teeth, and so therefore they're based out of Hastings and Napier the rest of the time. Wairoa people travel approximately 1 million k's per year just for specialist appointments. That's in Napier and Hastings, doesn't include further afield. That's actually quite a conservative estimate, and that doesn't count the fact that we charter planes, we charter Air Napier to fly in specialists 3 to 4 days a week so we can maintain high access from our site. In a series of whānau voice hui facilitated by the Hawke's Bay DHB before COVID, and we're going to do a second series, overwhelmingly transport came out as a primary concern for Wairoa people, and Charlie knows this and so does Craig. So that came out ahead of food and it came out ahead of access to services. Transport was their biggest concern. In 2023, Hawke's Bay DHB will have its own linear accelerator. So what that means is the opportunity to have your radiotherapy in Hastings instead of Palmerston North. And this is really relevant when it comes to the New Zealand Health and Disability Review, which requires DHBs to be sharing services. So there's a real chance that Gisborne people won't need to travel to Hamilton, that they would prefer to come to Hastings to use a linear accelerator. A, it's a much shorter distance, and B, in terms of how we're all related on the eastern seaboard, most people have more relatives and most likely choose to go from Gisborne to Hastings rather to Hamilton. So driver and staff experience. So even if the traffic flow is low in terms of the patients we see, the logistics of getting access is really, really high. So we don't just say, okay, you need to be in Hastings by this time. We actually have to arrange the transport for them. Patients sent by road. Here's an example with a severed finger on ice because the plane is 6 hours away. So to save that finger, we have to put them on the road because we know we could get there in 2 hours as long as there isn't a problem. Woman sent in early labour via car. That doesn't meet necessarily a threshold of emergency transfer. Woman having postpartum hemorrhages does. If that plane and that helicopter's not flying, they go in the back of an ambulance. That road is critical. Not everyone qualifies for National Travel Assistance for petrol vouchers. Comfort stops are a big barrier to using the hospital bus. It's a 9-seater bus, but it doesn't work for everybody. It leaves at 8 o'clock from Wairoa Hospital, and then it departs Hastings Hospital at 3. So it doesn't work for everybody if your appointment or your surgery is outside of that. We actually expect the road to close every year, particularly the Tūtira to Tangoio section. We kind of feel lulled into false sense of security at the moment because during COVID we had hardly any patients, and also 2019 was a really mild winter. So we know that that area closes from floods, slips and roadworks, and also accidents. The other issue we see is no regional planning for seasonal surges in Mahia and the rhythm and vines traffic on our road. And Mahia, that's about summer visitors, and it's really hard, it's just purely an estimate. Generally we plan for around 12,000 influx, but I believe it's much bigger than that, isn't it, Craig? And once again, COVID's making domestic tourism much more popular, particularly the back roads, including Highway 35. So the benefits we're seeking in Hawke's Bay DHB Wairoa, we want a reduced burden of transport experience on our Wairoa population and our visitors. I want to see future-proofing the Wairoa Napier access for all vehicle users for all seasons. So we want to know all year round you can plan the same way. We want to see prioritisation of Mahia blowhole to support best emergency access. The Tunanui Road as the alternative is a real concern in terms of ambulance and fire access. And we want priority focus on essential work for safety versus recreation for a rising tide of equity across the Wairoa district and Hawke's Bay district in relation to roading. That's all. If you've got questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much, Sonia. For my understanding, Mahia Blowhole, can you explain, is this a particular piece of the road, or what do you mean by the Mahia Blowhole?
Okay, the Mahia Blowhole is, Craig would probably explain it better than me, but essentially it's a piece of road where the road has been eaten away by the sea and the railway is on the other side.
I know exactly the piece. I didn't know that's what it was called, but yes, it's one way, very skinny, and it's not going to be long before it's all down there.
It's been called the Blowhole forever, and it is notorious. It was a great diving spot, but of course it's eating away at the road, and so sort of rock and a hard place with the railway on one side and the ocean eating away the other side.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, good submission. On that, you hit it on the nail, most of the things you've said, so that's great, thank you.
All right.
Actually, may I ask another question?
Why not?
Yep.
Good time.
Sonia, you've said the... You right there, mate?
Probably not.
You've said the outcomes that you wish to achieve. Practically, what does that mean? Practically, how do we achieve what you've asked us to do? For example, putting the investment of safety ahead of recreation. You spoke about reducing the burden. So what changes do we need to make? What investments do we need to make to achieve those outcomes? Because they're very fair
So
outcomes.
I think the primary site between Tūtera and Tonga has got to be the Devil's Elbow. And second to that would be the flooding at Tūtera. So at least when the flooding subsides, the road's still intact, but the Devil's Elbow, we expect that to close every year. We try and plan in winter conditions for that road closure. It's really concerning. We're not an ICU, we're what's called a level 2 emergency department. That's 2 nurses and a GP. Yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Mary-Ann Baker has a question.
Nice to meet you,
Transport
Sonia.
Manager.
Just in relation to public transport in Wairoa, do you think there is an unmet demand for transport within Wairoa, or is it Wairoa to Napier Hastings that's the problem?
So I think Warrell Napier Hastings, I think there could be a demand there. Locally, people are using the St John's service, but we do know that people try and use those health-funded services for other things. So what they'll do is they'll book the doctor's appointment and do the grocery shopping at the same time. So
On that public transport, Sonia, you said Wairoa District Council doesn't rate. It's unusual for all territorials to rate for transport. It's normally Hawke's Bay, normally a regional council that rates
Yes.
transport.
That's usefully clarified. All right. Well, thank you very much. Mrs. Smith, I was going to ask you about the point you raised in terms of forestry, but I think I understand it's a matter of that industry paying its way for the impact it has, I assume, on the rating network.
I guess one of the increasing challenges with forestry is the convoy of trucks, so that sort of negates the usefulness of the passing lanes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We'll hear from the next submitter now. I have Elaine and Sarah Douillet. I'm not sure if I have the pronunciation correct there. Committee, that's submitted number 27, page 104.
Douillet was the name, but that's fine. Good afternoon. Our submission number 27 is about people's well-being and health, the use of some of our side roads by heavy vehicles, and about potential saving for the Regional Council. The Council states to be concerned by the health of Hawke's Bay population, and this is commendable. Noise pollution, as any other type of pollution, has a negative impact on people's well-being and health. Noise below a level that causes physical damage is often described as unwanted sound, and what one views as music to the ears is abominable noise to the neighbours. I'm yet to come across someone who considers the sound of heavy vehicles as music to the ears. So trucks create noise and vibration that affect the life of many, children and adults. While these effects do vary depending on the road surface, they cannot completely be suppressed. We need goods to be transported within our region and between regions, so we need trucks. But do we need them everywhere? Taking our road, Natarawa Road, as an example, we have more and more heavy vehicle traffic, day and night. We are fortunate enough in that our house is about 300 meters from the road, but still suffer the noise and vibration caused by trucks. People from Bridgebar at the beginning of the road suffer a lot more. Practically, all these trucks have nothing to do on our road. So why are they there? They leave State Highway 58 at Mungawa Road, cross Marakakau Road, take Natarawa, join State Highway 50 to then rejoin the expressway at Links Road before Taradale, or vice versa. Why? Several options can be considered. Are they choosing the scenic route rather than the straight expressway? Unlikely. Is it to avoid the police checks that are sometimes performed on State Highway 50A, north or south of Marakakau roundabout? Possibly. Or is it because it's quicker than staying on the expressway? We believe this is the most likely reason. If confirmed, this could be a severe judgment of both our roading policy and the design of our roading network. It is a pretty negative situation if the main users prefer to use side roads rather than the planned and specifically designed route. Notwithstanding the reasons, trucks should not be allowed on roads where they have nothing to do. Besides noise pollution, the exponential increase of heavy vehicles on side roads has a damaging and costly impact on the road themselves. Rapidly talking about road wear and damage, as we don't have time to go too much into details, it is universally recognized that heavy vehicles cause more wear than light vehicles. By which factor? Different studies with often their own agendas indicate a factor from hundreds to tens of thousands based on weight per axle ratio. The type of chosen road surface decides partly how much wear and damage we will experience, how often we will need to rebuild the road, and how much maintenance will be needed. In short, better and longer lasting roads come with a more expensive price tag. The American Trucking Association remarks that if we were to build all our roads to a standard designed to withstand the passage of many of the heaviest trucks, then the wear will be minimal. Correct, but amusing self-evidence, the cost will be astronomical and we simply cannot afford them. We do not believe our road is the only example. On a number of occasions, I've followed heavy vehicle crossing Hastings through Marakakau and Pakofai roads, possibly as a shortcut to Whakatu Industrial Zone. It has to be said that since the introduction of median barriers on the expressway, journey times can be greatly affected if one has to follow a slow vehicle, like a tractor, or cannot overtake it, or if there has been an incident completely blocking the traffic. There might be a need to review our road networks policies. Irrespective of the exact value of this wear and damage factor, and for the above-mentioned reasons, it seems to make sense to have the sturdiest, albeit more expensive roads for our most important roads, and keep heavy traffic on those roads to limit wear on the other roads. We believe decisions should be taken to prevent heavy traffic using roads where they have nothing to do. Such policy will result in significant saving on our roads cost. Today, I understand 40% on the region's budget. More importantly, it will also result in a better protection of the health and well-being of the Hawke's Bay population living around our roads and streets. The regional and district council could actually be found at fault if their decisions or lack of decisions negatively affects the population. There were other points and comments in our written contribution. I believe we will need more time to address them. Access to Napier Port is an important and complex subject. We will require its own debate. On the national level, we believe a number of changes could be implemented with the goal of improving health and well-being, but it might be outside the scope of the regional plan. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Douillet. Have any of the committee members, apart from myself, got any questions I would like to ask?
No question.
No, I would just like to tease out a couple of things from you. One is related to the question Councillor Kerr asked the previous submitter. What specifically do you suggest we do with our transport plan to address the issue that you've raised in terms of directing heavy vehicle traffic onto the roads they should be on.
Well, I think there are several possibilities. You might look at what is done elsewhere. What I've seen in a number of countries is limiting the access of certain roads to trucks, saying no access if you have 7.5 tons, if you're not delivering or picking up something from that road. You could have the more drastic way of doing it will be to have speed bumps every 100 meters. Then you will oblige the every traffic to use the only route they can use. That seems a bit over the top, but I'm not in favor of punishment. I'm rather to guide the traffic where we want it to be. You could also consider, I understand this is being discussed elsewhere, these median barriers serve a purpose, I'm not disputing that, but it seems also they have some inconvenience. So maybe you could look at that.
It's certainly an issue that's been brought to our attention. Were you aware that as part of the process that I mentioned earlier, we went through something called a network operating framework, where all of the main road corridors in the region, certainly around Napier and Hastings, were looked at quite carefully in terms of whether they were primary or secondary freight routes, or primary or secondary, commuter traffic routes, or for other purposes. So those types of decisions have been, that type of process has informed the investment priorities in this regional transport plan, the very issue that you've raised. So I think it's a valid concern that you've raised. It is something we're alive to. It's just a matter of what we can actually do to
yeah, you might have to think, what if people do not do what you expect them to do?
Yes. There may be a limitation on our powers, but you've helped us with some practical suggestions here, so thank you for that.
Okay.
Mr Chair?
Yes,
Can
Councillor
I
Kerr.
just follow up the question? Thank you for your submission. I am concerned if trucks are taking what is physically the long way round as a shortcut. To me, if that's what they're doing, it's because our expressway is not living up to its name. So to understand that a little bit more, are there particular times of the day or days of the week where you notice the activity on the Tarawa Road is greater?
No, I would say it's all the time. Middle of the night, even middle of Easter weekend, we see logging trucks, fully loaded trucks and fully loaded trailer goes through Natarawa to the only place where they can go is the port. I don't expect they deliver anywhere in Omahu or anywhere around there. So they actually take that. I mentioned the police checks, and I don't believe that will be in view to avoid the police. It will be in view not to lose time dealing with the police checks, if you see the difference, what I mean. So I think it's maybe there is too much pressure on the truck drivers. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But it is, to answer your question, it is any time and any day.
Just to clarify a little bit further, is it trucks coming from the south mostly?
Both directions.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Very helpful. All right, now we've now got Mr. Carroll on Zoom, I understand.
Yeah, just give me one moment.
She's got a presentation, we just need to get up.
Mr. Carroll?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much. Hey, look, thanks very much for the chance to make a submission and speak with you. Look, my background, some of you will know, goes back to March 2013 when there was a workshop held at the council, Councillor Alan Dick, when he was chair of the committee, and which ended up bringing people from Gisborne, from the Hawke's Bay, with an interest in responding to the then CEO of Rail, Jim Quinn's request for proposals for the next Gisborne Railway. And it's been a journey since then. So with the whole, and I've got to know quite a few of the people, and that's why I'm doing this. You get involved. I did some work for Hawke's Bay Regional Council at the time as part of this to help facilitation, helping put some of the proposals we developed as a group in the early days and negotiations of the Rail. And then in 2019, the much more major Bill study funded by the Provincial Development and the Provincial Growth Fund, which had very in-depth studies about, I was part of the team doing interviews, the freight interviews, freight demands, and but there was a very detailed, much of it was about detailed engineering track study. So the first time that had ever been done, and the consultants involved with that very experienced and supported both verbally and in writing from QRail that they be able to do the job. They've done previous work for the Regional Council. So where we are now? Okay, we've got currently the new government, we've got changes of legislation, and I want to make a special thanks to Hawke's Bay Regional Council and to the Transport Chair, Martin Williams, Chair of the Council, Rex Graham, and Deputy Chair, Rex Barker in particular, for the active work you've been doing. There's been last year in particular again with letters to ministers, meetings with ministers, more recently again with new Minister Michael Wood, all the efforts you've been doing and your active support to get the railway reinstated for the benefit of the region. The new legislation, and also just in part of speaking, is because of that network and we've got to know, and who are not in front of you today, but some of them have been in the past, people like Steve Weatherall from Weatherall Transport, who all through this period has been a key advocate and supporter of getting this, reducing his trucks off the road, putting the containers onto a train. This is mainly about container freight. It's growing, the freight demands out of Gisborne are growing substantially. We found that in the study. This is quite different from a few years ago. The growth of, particularly in the intensive horticultural produce in Gisborne, the apple crops and others, and the increasing shift to processed timber is really putting a strain, as most of you know. I've just been hearing some of you talk about the locking trucks on the road and so forth, but trucks in general. And so the ability to be able to take some of that pressure off the road by using an asset that's already sitting there and that for the sake of getting some repairs could be put into action. So the points I'm just making about here in terms of the plan, they're in my written submission. I've also got in here, thank you for switching that on, because any of you who haven't with an interest, worth having a look. It's very transparent, the report that was done by Burrell. It's was you, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, along with Gisborne District Council and Wairoa District Council, were all members of the steering group, along with QRail, Ministry of Transport, NZTA, Te Rāwhiti Rail and Trust Te Rāwhiti. We're all part of the steering group who oversaw the putting together of this report and the finalising of it. So this is a put together joint effort. And so what I'm suggesting is, with all the background here, is that the plan, when you finalise the transport plan, to incorporate this into the plan. I've detailed in a wee bit in the submission. Go to the next, is some of the areas. Your next slide, please. Thank you. So you can see, first of all, align it with the fact that especially under the new mayor in Gisborne, Briette's been very, she's been picking up this one as an issue she wants resolved. She wants that railway reopened for the benefit of the region. They have recently put into the draft plan, transport plan, they've put in a clear statement to support the reinstatement of the line from Wairoa through to Gisborne, put a figure of $36 million external funding for that. That's the 36 is pretty consistent from the work we've been doing. That includes at least another 20% contingencies on earlier work to provide plenty of margin to be able to do this job and get it done. It'll be done within 12 months by regional contractors from the region. So the points are put in here, supply chain, you'll see some of the points there, but without going in, and I've suggested that as part of this, you're actually put in there, because government with the new plan is talking, and we've been in discussions with the rail division with the Ministry of Transport. So they're looking very much to the region to make statements in your regional plan, make it very clear of what you would want, and put in about external. And also the options now of a different, increasingly, the government's been using Crown funding, for example, via Treasury or Ministry of Transport to administer with funds out. For example, it could be as already been submitted from the council, that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council could pick up and pick up the use of the government funds and contract out to get the work done. maximising the use of local contracts out of the region. So what's suggested here, and I just want a bit more about the solutions, is the fact that this does, that it be a form of a joint steering group and incorporate key players who have an interest in this. So it's like Weatherall Transport, very knowledgeable about the whole and very important in guaranteeing the success of this by pulling the trains, as we've done previously. But really, and leading to those key customer base. Including part of the bill study had quite extensive iwi consultation. They're increasingly partners who were never previously involved with this are now involved, suggesting that there be from the councils appointed project manager, work with Gisborne District Council and Wairoa to get someone as a point person to help to drive this and drive the jointly the initiatives and help to get greater engagement with Pure and other parties on board, help to make it happen. I've suggested that as part of things to drive your policies, that you also you provide some catalyst funding to make things happen. And it might be you have something here from 10 to 50,000, so you can actually get on and help to drive to make this happen. There is private sector funding. Business funding has been interested. It's been offered already to the government through there's options to help to get this out of some key business people out of Gisborne. They want this done. It needs a regional cooperation. Thank you for what you've been doing so far. And it also meets climate change and other benefits. For example, 70% reduction of greenhouse emissions by switching from road to rail. And you also, the annual road maintenance fees, the bill study estimated they would be reduced by $1.2 to $1.7 million. So there's some, ongoing, whole series of ongoing benefits by helping to make this happen. So the issue is helping to make it happen, get it in the plan, make it clear to central government that you're, not only have you been doing this, which you've been working on already, but actually putting it in the plan and close alignment with Gisborne. So please welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll, and thank you on behalf of the region for the effort that you and your network are putting into this this venture. It's only through that type of relentless energy and persistence that change happens, so congratulations on that. I also wanted to thank you for the specific proposals you've made by way of amendments to the plan that would deliver on what you're requesting from us. What I understand from talking to you, and this is my question, is
yes,
that if we are express and clear in our ambition around the reopening of the railway line in our transport plan, and that is equally a message that's received from Gisborne down in Wellington, then the funding doors of Wellington are more likely to be opened in our favour than if we remain silent on it, particularly in light of the new legislation. Is that the point?
That's absolutely correct, and that's why this is so important you actually put it into the plan and seem to be doing it. I mean, we've had that verbally from the Rail Division, Ministry of Transport in Wellington. Yeah, this is very important for them to have that and support the cases they're making to ministers. There's 4 key ministers on this. Of course, you have a local one with Stuart Nash too to keep working on about this as well.
All right, are there any other questions from other committee members? Councillor Kerr.
Actually, a question to our staff.
Yes.
Have we submitted on Tairāwhiti's regional plan?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I've just had a question from our Policy and Regulation Manager as to whether this is in the Tairāwhiti plan as yet or something that's on its way through the submission process. Because
it's actually in their draft plan. It's a very clear statement. They've taken some wording out of the Burrell report, and the other thing they've done is they've also put it in they've added it in right there it's about a regional initiative, just as recommending to go into yours.
All right.
So it's actually there as an additional thing. They added it as it's very special. They said the reinstatement of the Gisborne-Wairara line,
Okay.
$36 million external.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carroll. I think we're out of time, but that's very clear, very helpful, and
Thank
we
you.
will certainly put that into our deliberation mix and give it
Thank you.
due attention.
Thank you.
Now, we have Mr. Gwynn, possibly Mrs. Gwynn,
Oh, he's speaking on behalf of her.
speaking on behalf of both.
So there's two submissions.
Welcome, Robin. Come and into the hot seat. Now, you weren't here when I kicked off the meeting, Robin, but the way this works is you'd be quite familiar with it. We're not going to discuss or debate. We're going to hear from you and we're going to ask you questions, and it's your opportunity to make sure that we get the message you're trying to share through your written submission, which we've read. And you have 10 minutes. In fact, I think you've probably got 15
He's
minutes.
got 5 minutes on behalf of his wife.
So you've got 15 minutes starting now. And good afternoon.
Thank you. And for those who know me will recognise that on my left I do not have my wife. But she is unfortunately in Nelson. I don't know whether she would in fact have submitted at all had she known when she did submit that you would change the hearing date to a point where she could not appear. But anyway, she's in Nelson and apologises. And I've asked Jenny, who's going to be speaking to you, I understand, later in the day, but I've asked her to read what my wife wanted to say. So do you want her or me first? Your choice.
Well, I think it's your choice, really. So we'll hear from you, shall we?
Okay, so start with me. Okay. I'm a historian. I'm a historian both by profession and in terms of my understanding of life. And historians are pattern makers. So my submission to you started from the Council's pattern of behaviour on land transport over the last 2 decades, which could be summarised as making occasional sensible comments, but ignoring the key developments happening around us and avoiding taking essential actions. And alas, it seems to me, the latest 10-year plan you've now put before us does more of the same. So rather than deal in details, I'm not going to be talking about the problems of the expressway. My submission is about a vision which, in my view, should have suffused every page of your plan with a sense of urgency and change. And I've supported that position by 2 eminent authorities from very different fields, one a naturalist, the other an economist. My wife's and my reaction to Attenborough's A Life on Our Planet, a hardback book published late last year, was to order over 100 copies and send them out in our circles as widely as we could. We thought that was the best way we could celebrate our golden wedding earlier this year. It was an operation that cost time and money, but it will tell you that we're absolutely serious in saying that we live in a time of crisis. And no, we're not thinking about COVID. And if we can't find a way to weather it, our grandchildren simply have no future. The dice have already been thrown, the wheels are already in motion, and we need emergency action on a scale humans have never actually met in their history. And that's why I say, halfway down my second page, that this council, like others worldwide, is confronted by a vital need for emergency action. We've no time for rehashing past processes. We need to move really fast and on a scale for which our normal planning is unsatisfactory and must give way before a wider vision. Well, David Attenborough is a household name. Das Gupta is not, or not yet, but in a New Zealand where the 1980s ushered in widespread blind acceptance of the arguments of the Chicago School of Economics, his views have particular resonance. Those 1980s arguments were based on the assumptions that the only things that mattered were those that could be measured, and that individuals had the right to feather their own nests regardless of the common good. No doubt a young Mr. Trump applauded. To someone like me, appalled at what it meant in New Zealand for what had been a country with high standards of education and health and public service, the 1980s reforms failed because they didn't take people into account. Now Professor Dasgupta, who is an emeritus professor of economics at Cambridge, shows they're also based on hopelessly bad economics. Their advocates had ignored the real costs of exploitation, and their equations don't hold up. Does that matter to you today in this regional council? Well, you bet it does. The reason our land transport plans haven't advanced as they should have this century is that the people drawing them up suffered from the same blindness as those who brought in the Chicago school reforms. Now, having done next to nothing over 20 years, we, your electorate, and you, our decision makers, have no choice but to recognize that our long-standing planning processes haven't worked because their economic foundations are rotten at the core. Our past plans, transport plans, have been attuned to the needs of our professional road transport practitioners. They've been given special status as key stakeholders, with vested interests to be paid particular attention. But now, we and you and they all have to understand that we've been living beyond our means for years, to the point where every one of us are now equal key stakeholders in the survival of our race. That means out with previous assumptions and in with a truly new vision. And that's why I reject the current draft and why I've concluded I look forward to a new plan produced with real urgency and released before the end of next year, which takes proper account of the challenges which our generation faces. Without it, Council will have failed in the fundamental justification for its existence to preserve our environment. Thank you.
All right, well, we could have questions now, or we could hear from Ms. Elliott now. What would perhaps we ask you questions now? I've got a couple, Mr. Wynne, and again, the passion and energy and focus of your submission is welcomed. If we didn't have that type of input into these processes, well, the world would be the place that you're trying to move us away from and remain so. So, thank you. Can I just clarify something with you? Are you suggesting a wholesale rewrite here, or I mean, are you alive to the fact that we have an express policy which is directed at a transport system that contributes to a carbon neutral Hawke's Bay, and that there are a number of policies in there directed to that end of promoting public transport and safe cycling networks and that sort of thing?
Yeah,
or is it a write-off?
No, I agree, and probably that's totally fair criticism. But I just sort of felt when I read this, and you'll have seen I put it against the background of what I recalled from 2004, and saw that absolutely nothing had changed in between. And I thought, yes, well, this will not do, and what's missing is an awareness that the climate change situation is so serious, and so are indeed other aspects of our society, that we actually have to plan from a different perspective. So I took part in various efforts, and particularly the early part of the century, where I attended meetings, where I remember, for example, someone suggesting at one of them that perhaps we should have someone to represent the interests of pedestrians, which was laughed out of court. Because the way the people who were on the panels that were developing the policies, what they'd been trained to accept was that the people who mattered were the people who had put money into something, and therefore they should be heard and no one else should. What I'm saying is we're past that time, and now we've all got an equal stake, and we all have to get heard. So we are all key stakeholders in that sense. Yes, I accept that there are ideas, but what I thought was completely missing was how they're going to happen, step by step over 10 years. And if it's a 10-year plan, that's what I expect to see. It's not there. or if it is, I didn't find it.
Yes, I understand.
I think perhaps you do need to hear Margaret's, because she's more practical than me, and you may find her submission more helpful. So perhaps...
Well, look, can I just ask you a follow-up question? And it's a really important issue. It's often buried in the schedules at the end, but just so you understand, we've got a very clear message from Wellington that there's no more money for new roading projects. What it's about is using our roading assets in a more innovative way and towards a carbon zero future, and in a way that ensure freight gets where it needs to, and provides other people, a wider range of choices. The fact that you are using a road on a bicycle or on a bus doesn't mean the road's necessarily a bad thing, and a lot of that is safety. I wasn't sure if you were aware that the investment decisions are all directed to that type of objective.
I do understand that, but I still think that there is a need for a total restart of what the objectives are. I mean, should in fact Hastings and Napier have completely closed off no vehicle central cities, for instance? If so, then that will certainly encourage people to take public transport to get there.
So be bolder. All right. Okay, well look, I could actually ask you questions about this all afternoon, but we're not allowed to, we're running out of time. So, Ms. Elliott.
Does that
Is
work?
this working?
It does.
Yes, it does when I talk. Is that right?
Do I turn something off?
No. My submission focuses on climate change, the most urgent crisis confronting us. I note that the draft transport plan does mention climate change, but it totally fails to explore its implications for how we live, move, and convey all freight. I want to concentrate on two areas where carbon emissions can and must be reduced: public transport and movement of freight. Public transport. The Climate Change Commission urges the adoption of electric vehicles by individuals, but this will simply take time we no longer have. Even if electric cars became much more affordable than what they are now. Public transport would seem to be the solution, but will require a huge behaviour change. There will need to be an education campaign and incentives. At present, the bus service is limited, infrequent, and mainly runs on main roads. I note that the Regional Council website mentions trials of on-demand buses, but there are no details in this plan. Is there any intention to electrify buses, minibuses? In what way do on-demand buses differ from taxis? Page 38 of the draft plan mentions decarbonising buses and the council vehicle fleet, but no time frame is given and no targets or funding set. One possible place to begin encouraging the use of buses is to work with industries to set up incentives for people commuting to work. Another would be incentives for car sharing so that we reduce the number of vehicles on our roads. And removement of freight. At present, 95% of local freight is carried on our roads. There are at present no renewable fuel heavy trucks available. Rail and coastal shipping offer the best way to reduce carbon emissions and the number of trucks on our roads. This report makes no mention of working to put more freight onto rail from Wairoa, no mention of a freight hub to enable short truck journeys from rail destination. Hawke's Bay roads are vulnerable to sea level rise and extreme weather events. Many bridges are weight restricted. There are difficulties with rail too. Many urban level crossings, single track, low clearance bridges. But shouldn't funding be directed to addressing these rather than towards roads? I note that all but one of the activities in 9.1 and 9.2 are on roads. Where are the targets for increased use of rail? Our cities are car-oriented with housing widely scattered. We must move towards designing our towns and cities so that almost everything residents need for daily life and work is within 15 minutes travel by walking, cycling, or public transport. I know this is not within the scope of this transport plan, but I hope the Regional Council will argue for this concept when discussing urban design with other councils. I look forward to the draft plan being rewritten with climate change as its focus.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elliott. I'd rather hog the floor, so I'm going to hand it over to others. But I just wanted to ensure that you were aware of Objective 5, which is the land use planning point you've just made, is that if we're going to design, the biggest transport investment you can make is land use planning for exactly the reason you state. Now, questions from other committee members? Yes. Could we, and this is a general question, for example, for Mr. Carroll, if you are able to leave behind or send in a written copy, I've taken notes, but that would assist in our deliberations. Is that?
These submissions are, we've got copies of their presentations.
Oh, you do have the copies?
Yes.
Great, but
yes.
These are the oral ones, you won't have those.
Yeah.
So much.
Look, I've got a question, and it's possibly an unfair one, but I would like the assistance you may be able to provide. We're also being presented with a very strong, compelling sociological case, if you like, as to the needs of Wairoa and access to health services and sports and recreation and just things that really people take, or should be basic rights of life, that are critically dependent on a more viable transport corridor between Wairoa and Napier in particular. And there's a railway line there, and there's a substandard road. Have you got any thoughts on how we can better connect Wairoa to Napier in a way that is climate change friendly?
Well, I certainly think it would be rail, and I presume it's a matter of having rail that enables people to get from one to the other and back again within the day. Beyond that, no, I have not given that matter proper thought at all.
One of the points that's made is if you've got fewer corners and bends, then there's emissions reduction because people aren't accelerating and braking. And just, I guess I'm putting to you perhaps that road investments for safety and efficiency aren't necessarily counterproductive in climate change terms. Would you accept that at all?
Well, it's just that, I mean, I read safety kept coming through. I think safety keeps coming through, firstly, because how do you argue against it? I mean, I did my best to kill my wife and myself by falling asleep at the wheel the year before last. I don't recommend it. It's not a good plan. But I don't actually think you can, whatever you do is going to prevent people being as stupid as I was. And I don't see how you actually educate people not to cross yellow lines, which New Zealand drivers like doing. So rather than spend a great deal of time on that, I'd rather have the money spent actually on road education rather than...
Right. Thank you. That's very clear. Well, thank you both. Your Worship.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. You know, it's all very well and you know, great presentation but if you live in a bigger city, but once again, living in Wairoa, the trains don't leave when you want them to leave, and the buses don't leave when you want them to leave. Cars, your own private car does leave when you want them to leave, and getting from a hospital to the train station is quite an ordeal for Wairoa. They're not anywhere near together. So some things aren't as simplistic as just assuming. Sonia mentioned this morning her great presentation with DHB that there has a bus that leaves at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's actually probably too late for a lot of people to get down for their appointments, and it's probably too early for a lot to get to the appointments later on. So it's a real juggling act for Wairoa people.
I'd agree, and but surely this is a matter of the Wairoa community agreeing that after discussions, which it will have to hold, this is the time when they would like to be able to get a train going into, if it's Napier, and similarly in Napier for getting to Wairoa, and then try and sew it together. But I agree, it is not a simple matter. I mean, it's a big country, 4 or 5 million people, actually, and you can't cover all of it equally.
Thank you very much. We better not debate that point any further. That's not today's job, unfortunately, much as it's tempting. So,
Mr. Chair.
we have, I'm sorry, you're over there on my right in my blind spot.
It's all right, I wasn't making a noise.
Councillor Taylor.
Kate Taylor from Central Hawke's Bay. Just you mentioned a lack of vision in the plan, and how would you suggest that? Well, what do you suggest should be a priority to get that quote sense of urgency and change that you want?
Well, it's a matter of where you're starting from. And what I read was a plan which started from the plan that we last did 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whenever it happened to be, and modelled it on that and used the same kinds of people to come up with answers, and surprise, surprise, they've come up with the same kinds of answers. I don't think we can afford to do that anymore. I think you actually need a different lot of people looking at it, and it does involve the entire community. And I feel strongly on this matter of stakeholders. I think what happened in the 1980s was we bought the idea that stakeholders were people who'd put money into something and therefore ought to be heard a lot more than anyone else. Well, of course they must be consulted, but it's a big but that then comes. If what's happening affects every one of us, then the consultation's got to be wider.
At this stage,
And the vision has to be wider.
at this stage of the process, how do you think we get that sense of urgency?
Well, my personal answer was to send out 100 copies of Attenborough's book. I can't say what your answer is, but I think one of the things about that particular book by Attenborough is it's positive. It's not just saying we live in terrible times. It does come up with answers, but as well as being positive, and very constructive, it lays the matter out, and I think that any intelligent person would accept the vision that it proposes. So that's why I put this high up on my list of priorities, and really why I'm here today. I've also been trying to introduce the same thing to the Climate Change Commission, you'll be surprised to hear.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Gwynn. All right. We will now hear from, I understand, the next two submitters, CHB District Council and the Matariki and Gut Drive Trust submitters. So there's a collective there, not here as yet. So we will hear from Councillor Nixon.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair. I just need to check that Simon Nixon is a personal submitter.
Yeah, yes.
So are you able to confirm when you start, Simon, that you're submitting personally?
Yes.
Thanks.
I addressed him as Councillor Nixon out of respect rather than for any formal purposes. Thank you, Councillor Kerr, for clarifying that.
I've ended up slightly earlier than I was expecting, but that's fine.
In case anyone's wondering, Simon and I have not met or engaged recently.
Yes, I thought that too.
Oh, well done.
Sure. I've been to the dentist, so I don't know if I can get my lips around the words today or not.
And we're on page 277, I think,
Yeah.
or 277 for the written submission.
I made a written submission, but I'm not going to refer to that. I'm sure if you want to read it, you can. Just a few sort of opening comments. As far as I'm concerned, transport is the single most important contributor to civilization and well-being. Every city in the world has some form of urban transport system. I'm from Wellington originally, and I know what a decent urban transport system's like. The trains there are fantastic, the buses are not bad when they're running. I've been to a few overseas countries, and I've certainly experienced good urban transport in those areas too. I'm going to concentrate on the urban bus service, but there's just a couple of other points that have arisen partly because of previous speakers, but also another issue that's dear to my heart. We were talking about the Wairau Road. I recently, the day of the proposed likely tsunami, had to travel to Wairau early in the morning. I could not believe the number of trucks on there. They were in convoys, there were so many of them, and they were huge, bead trains and curtain sides, all the rest of it. The second thing I'd like to raise is that yesterday I witnessed a presentation from NZTA on speed limits for the Napier-Taupo Road. And I thought it reeked of a decision already made. And two things made me think that. One, just a couple of points. NZTA said the average speed on the road is already 80 k's, and they're proposing to make it 80 k's. Well, I drive it often enough to know it might be 80 k's. In fact, it's a lot less when you're following a truck up the Titiakura Hill. But actually, it's misleading to claim it's 80 k's. You had to have a 80 k's where. The second thing is I asked the question, what percentage of vehicles exceeded the 100k speed limit? They didn't know. I just throw those in as a couple of points. The second point I want to raise is cycling. Now, I'm a keen cyclist. I tried to do about 80 k's a week to council meetings, to go shopping, go for coffee, all those sort of things. Now, if we seriously think we're going to get people on cycles, we're dreaming the way things are. We're dreaming. It is damned dangerous out there. You get to a roundabout and you're lucky to get home. That's my experience. And I think, there needs to be a sense of reality come into the cycling thing. And I say that as a cyclist, which I think is important. I've said it every day I get home, I think I was lucky to get home. So I want to talk about the urban transport system, buses. First point I want to make is the fleet is great. They are modern, they are clean, the drivers are great, they're a pleasure to ride in. The second thing is the number of people riding them is diminishing year after year. I'll give you a few numbers. Back in 2014, 800,000 passengers. 4 years later, 2017-18, it dropped to 666,000. 2018-19, 645, 20,000 less. 2021, remember this was the COVID year, down to 512,000. And extrapolating the figures for this year, I think it's going to be down to 400,000. In other words, we're going to see over, 6-7 years, a 50% reduction in bus passengers. And in this time, there has been significant population growth. And that's worth remembering. So the actual reduction in usage is really greater than just the straight numbers. The reality is most of the buses are empty. And I've been sitting in the seat over there watching the buses out there, and I find it's no different from Hastings, where you can sit in Westermans and watch convoys of buses going past and nobody on them for hours. There's something seriously wrong with the buses service. If it wasn't carrying about 200,000 students, young people and tertiary students and so on, the buses would be empty. They really would be. The second issue I have is the cost of the service. Now, I might have got these figures wrong, but they're going to be sort of somewhere in the right area because I took them off the stuff you sent me. Thank you very much. According to me, the subsidy received from NZTA and ratepayers is 4.36 million. And that's compares to about 3 years ago when I believe the figure was 2.5 million. So we're almost doubling the cost and halving the number of passengers. I mean, what business could operate like that in the private sector? You'd be out the door and broke. If that figure of 400,000 is correct, and it was an extrapolation of the figures for the first 8 months of the year, and remember COVID hasn't been a feature during that time, the average subsidy cost, if I've got the figure right, is $10.90 per trip. $10.90. Now, if you consider one person travelling to work and back each day and making maybe one more trip each weekend, that's 600 bus trips a year, and at $12.50 per trip is equivalent to a subsidy of $6,540, well, let's say $6,500 a year. It's a significant subsidy. And the point I'm making that is, a lot of that's been paid by poorer people who actually can't use the bus service because they're working on orchards, they're in the industrial areas of Mahu Road, Irongate, and so on. So they don't have access to the service, and yet they're still paying for it through rates. And there are areas that don't have a service, Waimara, Te Wanga, Haumaana. One of the things I've always noticed is the people travelling on buses. I mean, you do get people that are obviously not well off, but when I see the peak time services, it seems to me that a lot of them are fairly well heeled. In other words, the very poor are actually subsidised and they're fairly well heeled. That's just an impression I have. Maybe the numbers will recover, because I know the urban transport services are down throughout the country as a result of the COVID lockdown. But maybe they won't, because if there is a move to working from home, then less people are going to be travelling. And maybe the COVID process has sort of alarmed people to the point that they actually don't want to travel in the buses because they don't feel as safe as they might have once done. And I just say, what's the logic of pouring ever more dollars into supporting a service that fewer and fewer people seem to want? Why do I think most people don't use the urban bus service? Well, we actually have a low population density. We are not Wellington or Auckland, where the people are packed in like sardines. We have a significant rural economy, and public transport just doesn't work for forestry, agriculture, horticulture, viticulture. Our employers are spread out, as I said before, Irongate, Mahu, Whakatū. They're a long way from the bus service. We don't have traffic jams. I always say if we get 3 cars in a row, we think we've got a traffic jam. Parking is relatively easy to find, and it is affordable because it costs nothing most of the time. The bus services are relatively infrequent, so if you miss the bus, you have to wait sometimes an eternity. In fact, on one occasion, I was waiting down in Havelock North to get into Hastings, and I thought I'd walk to the next bus stop. And then I thought I'd walk to the next bus stop. By the time I finished, I'd got to Hastings, and I still hadn't seen the bus. That was a weekend, I must admit. It takes an eternity to get somewhere. One of our councillors rang me up, complaining, and said somebody had rung them just a few days before, saying that it had taken an hour and a half to get from, I thought it was Hastings to Napier, but it might have been Havelock North. But it doesn't matter. I mean, you can travel in a car in 20 minutes. I could ride a bike, and I do sometimes, in well under an hour from Hastings to Napier. So, it's not all that attractive. And the other thing is the buses go all over the place. And I'll just give you an example. The Havelock North to Hastings bus, urban bus service. It takes off, it goes across the railway line up to, I think it's Demona Road, cuts across the top, comes down Queen Street, and when you travel, there's nobody else on the bus but you. Across the railway, turns left, goes past the Kmart Mall into St Albans Street, turns right there, cross Karamu Road to the next road, I'm not sure if that's Warren Street, turns left there, sort of goes through that industrial area so that it can get back to be outside the mega mall, Kmart and all that, not Kmart, the warehouse. The bus takes about 5 minutes to get from New World Hastings to the middle of Havelock. It takes 15 minutes to get to the point that you're outside New World and Hastings. I just don't think it's attractive for people.
Well, Mr Nixon, we're
I saw heard
you 10 minutes.
Yes.
And I think you've made the point quite clearly around the merits or otherwise of our present public transport system.
Yes.
We, I'm afraid, are running out of
Yes.
time. I just want to ask you one question, and it is that could you please stick around and wait for the next submitter to speak?
Certainly.
In light of your presentation and your point that we are dreaming if we're going to get people onto cycles, I think you'd be very interested in the next submitter.
Yes.
And I also would like you to engage or read up on the on-demand study, which for public transport, we're looking at addressing those very issues. So.
Yes, I was aware of it.
Yeah, thank you
very
so much for
Do
bringing those
appreciate
issues to
that.
attention.
That was the
Because
main part of my presentation.
In fact, that is the business case. You've given us the business case for why we need to do something quite radically different
Yes.
with public transport. So
And that's what I was trying to do.
yeah, thank you very much indeed. All right, now, I'm not sure who else is here, but I think we've got, we could hear Councillor Van Beek, or Giraffe Van Beek in his capacity today, rather than as a regional councillor, as a submitter to this transport plan. And Mr Van Beek's submission is submitted number 39. on page 143. You probably need no introduction, but welcome to you. I've got a fair bit you cycled here, and I am delighted to have you in our midst. So welcome, Mr. Van Beek.
I'm not sure if you need to be injured to actually make an impact because my previous submitter, but to get a bit of sympathy, I thought I'd get a sweat up with biking here, and hence I look the way I look. I almost don't need to speak if you look at that picture. You know, isn't that a beautiful picture to look at? Here you see a young, compared to myself, a young mother, no care of the world. She's got actually a young child biking next to her. And this is the type of cycling that we all should be able to enjoy. Myself, I grew up in that particular country, and from 8 to 9, I had the freedom to develop. My circle of influence, or where I could go, was as far as I could cycle, okay? And if you look at the statistics around the world, Dutch children are the most developed and the most happy type of children, because from 8, 9, they actually have the opportunity to develop and to go where they want to go, make decisions quite early in a safe environment because they use the bike. They don't actually have to go and ask mum and dad where they're going to go to because they actually can go there, which is really great. Anyway, I'll make a start. Thank you very much that I'm able to spend 10 minutes and I won't take any more. I would love to take 2 hours, but I haven't been afforded that amount of time. So, in general, those who know me, I'm a bit of a cycle mad person, but cycling for a purpose. I do cycle for recreation as well. But what I really would like to see in our strategy is the fact that we need to have a mode change. It is talked about in the strategy, but it only is words at this stage. And also those who are involved in developing the strategy, we have got a climate crisis announced here in Hawke's Bay Regional Council. New Zealand, Aotearoa itself has got a climate emergency declared. I can't really see that in this strategy, which is a real worry. And hence, I want to focus on that particular area. And I would be amiss if I didn't focus on that. So if I can go to slide 2, can I?
Yep.
Right click?
Yep. Oh no, just normal click.
Okay. So as you can see, this is actually from Whakakotahi, Wakata Kotahi. As you can see, there is a trend in New Zealand that we actually love the motor car. And the number of cars per household that actually have increased is continued to rise. And that is a real worry. Similar happened in Europe as well when, after the Second World War, when gas and oil resources were found, the general level of income rose, and of course with that came the motor car. With it came deaths on the road, with it came also death of children. So in Holland, I'll give you one statistic, in the 70s, average child death by car was 400 of a population of about 17 million. They've got it down to 14 children now dying on the road through cars. So that's a huge reduction. And if that is not a statistic that we would aspire to actually get that reduction is really important. I still believe that we actually don't cycle the way we should and would like to. So the current network is built for cars, as you can see. So what is the reason that we actually have that increase in car use and no increase in cycling? We have increase in cycling from a recreational point of view, and Hawke's Bay is one of the best regions when it comes to recreational cycling. But cycling for purpose is a totally different story. And I'll have a slide in a minute that you can see why I believe that is. But these are the words that come with it. Safety, it's absolutely not safe. We, for instance, have had 2 staff in the last month that one was knocked off her bike here in Napier, broke 2 bones in her leg. Another one got doored. She decided not to be a statistic because there was a work colleague that opened the door in front of her. And that's courageous, but at the same time, we see a lot of these instances where people actually get knocked off bikes, and because of pride, they clean themselves off, get on the bike, and off they go again. we don't actually measure this level of carnage that we see on the road of the vulnerable, because if you can see, bikes are very vulnerable. You have got no protection. So these are the reasons that we don't actually have a change of mode. Lack of incentives. There are no incentives. And Councillor Nixon said it before, parking is relatively cheap. Parking is generally relatively easy to find. The reason why there is no cycling happening is because of poor design, an absolute poor design. We've just driven from Twyford to here, and there are areas, if I were to be a female, I would have to wear a sports bra. And I've just quoted somebody that I know, because it's so uncomfortable to ride, okay? And it's also public perception. You take a bike ride through Hastings at, say, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I would get normally yelled at 3-4 times. I get 2 to that, and I'm called a clown. But I'm actually biking where I'm supposed to be biking. There's actually a bike path where I am, and I get told to move over, and I'm actually on a cycle lane in the middle of Heratona. That's the poor perception that we've got. And this is the issue that we have got. So we've got beautiful bike lanes in places, but then all of a sudden, and I just used the roundabouts in Hastings, but here in Napier exactly the same, all of a sudden there's absolutely no protection. You are just on the road, no protection, you're sharing the car, the road with a car, a bus, or even worse, a truck. And we've had one death in my memory in Hastings that actually one boy of 8 was actually sucked underneath the truck on the roundabout. Should have never happened. Should have never happened. And the thing also is that really makes me mad. 1 kilometre of highway equates to 100 kilometres of cycle lane. 1 kilometre of highway equates to 100 kilometres of cycleway. So in theory, the infrastructure is more or less already there. And I haven't got the link here. Go and watch the transformation of Seville in Spain. From 2005 to 2008, they were able to increase cycling in that city by 1,000%, simply by taking parking spaces away and make them into cycle lanes. Make them into cycle lanes that actually were raised and were actually separated from the road users. So this is the reason why we actually have the issues that we've got. A, because of safety, but 2, it is because we actually have got several traffic strands that are mixed. So we've got buses, trucks, and cyclists and walkers sharing the same road, especially at the roundabout situations. And that's a Vision Zero that Europe uses. They actually have actively promoted the separation of the traffic strands. So it's the unraveling of the traffic strands. So speed and mass needs to be separated from a lower speed and a lower mass. So walking and cycling, but public transport actually, funny enough, sits also in that space. They can be used in that, in that area as well. And I believe that active transport is very much a complementary source of transport with public transport. Public transport cannot stand alone without active transport, which is walking and cycling. So that really needs to be planned as well. So, and this actually is a picture that actually shows it. The cycle, that cycling in itself cannot actually be mixed. And this is the percentage of people, when surveyed, how comfortable they feel in biking. So the little photo on the left-hand side, you've got, they maybe are a little bit young to be on bikes and on a road like that, but it actually proves the point. And that paint doesn't keep these two little ones safe. It needs to actually be physically separation that will keep them safe, okay? And whatever we design, and I prefer to have designers involved than engineers. Engineers are the ones about the coin, but designers actually will be thinking about it, often left-brainers, and actually how things can actually work well for all involved. all ages and abilities networks, which is actually very important. I see Martin getting a little bit worried, so I better speed up. So these are the Vision Zero principles about safety. So speed, control and separation. So we need to have areas in our towns where we can, where we have up to 30 kilometres speed. After that, it actually is too fast. And they actually are bike lanes where at times cars can be travelling, but they'll have to be a guest in that particular area and always give way and have awareness of cycling. You can read the rest. I'll carry on because I've heard the little bell go. So this once again was a street, and I've seen a previous street where there's actually two very large car lanes and just 2 footpaths on either side, and they've actually redesigned this whole street to actually, as you can see, very safe, young person cycling to school or to shopping or whatever it may be. And if you can see the area where the cars now travel, it's actually minimal compared to the area that is actually now set aside for cycling and for walking.
Thank you, Mr. Van Beek. We have run out of time, but I just wanted to thank you, but as with the previous submitters, keeping us honest, keeping us on target, and actually giving us some practical ways to deliver the vision that we've heard the previous submitters request that we aspire to. So that's really, really helpful. I just had one very quick question. When you said 1k of road is 100k of kilometres of cycleway, you mean in cost terms?
In cost terms, yes.
Thank you very much. We don't have time for any questions.
I'll give you five of my minutes because I'm going to take 5.
Okay, all right. In that case, Councillor Kerr, you may use one of them.
You came up with a whole lot of reasons why people are not cycling. Where is that data from?
This is generally found in data that actually is generated from Europe. So there's a lot of on the internet availability. I've got a whole cycle plan of and unfortunately it's in Dutch, of the city of Amsterdam, and also, but it's in English, of the city of Copenhagen. So those are the statistics that they've actually pulled out.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
I'll only use 1 minute. Hey, great presentation, Jeff. Just on those photos of those, beautiful people cycling, the image I had of that family was if they fell off their bike and they had no helmets on, it would be rather a worry. So I hope you're not suggesting we don't wear helmets. I see you have one there, so that's good.
Was that your question?
No, I'm just...
But I will respond to it anyway.
Please do proceed.
The other half's going to be the question. So obviously your presentation is great for urban areas and that. I would love it to be able to fit into the Wairau area somehow, but we've got a lot of hills and we've got rural, and it's not that easy to cycle from Wairau to Napier. And but we struggle for funding on our roading as it is, and I'd love NZTA to come up with some scheme that could give us the tools to do some great cycleways, because we do really struggle. Because not everybody cycles and not everybody would back us if we've got a couple of good cycleways around the town, but we'd love to go out further and do a big circuit and that. But it's just funding that. How do you suggest we do that?
Whakakotahi, I believe, actually has got a lot of money when it actually comes to active transportation. And I think, your chair, Martin Williams, will be well capable of actually making those connections. And I believe what you've really got in Wairau itself can actually be transformed, as you see there, can be transformed to actually make that use. And a person cycling to work for a year will lose up to 6 to 7 to 8 kilos of weight. That's a major health benefit that can come into that as well.
Just the picture looks a bit misleading. There's a lot of bicycles here. You put them all on that footpath, there ain't enough room.
So that's in those countries, parking for bikes is a real issue.
But I mean, if they were all on the footpath at the same time, it's going to be a problem.
Oh, cycling wise, it will be, and they have actually got issues where they've got actually cycling congestion. So they're actually thinking of actually taking more cars off the roads, reducing the parking, so they actually make room available for cycling. Mind you, these are cities where generally there's universities, and there are at least 250 to 300,000.
One other quick thing is our kids are now using skateboards and scooters.
Yeah.
You supporting that?
You can use that on them.
Sorry, look, I need to be fair to all of the other submitters. If we've got a question that just has to be asked, please ask it. If it doesn't, do think that we've got other submitters to come. So, all right? Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Van Baker. It was very, very clear and very, very helpful. I want to just go back a step and see if we've got either Cherie Flintoff or Kelly and Ann. I can see we've got Matt here. And was it Avi Tilio Fakosi? We've got any of those? Sorry about that attempt at... No? Okay. That's the Matariki people. Have we got Central Hawke's Bay's intended presenter here yet? No? Okay. Well, let's get back then to... no. We're going to hear next from Dean Hyde and Jade Peterson, if here. And now we're dealing with submitted number 55 on page 237. Welcome. And I'm sorry for being brutal with timing, but we do have to ensure that everyone gets their say.
No problem, this shouldn't take 10.
Good afternoon and welcome. The idea is you've got 10 minutes. We'll ask questions within it. We're not here to debate or discuss. We'll take it away to deliberations in due course, but we do want to hear from you. We've got your written submission. What would you like us to take away and make sure that we understand that's your task? You've got 10 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Dean Hyde, President of the EIT Student Association. My colleague Jade Peterson is our General Manager. Thank you for the opportunity. This wee address will be as brief as our submission. We were hoping to offer some additional support material today in regard to numbers of students now travelling from Central Hawke's Bay and also from Wairoa through to Gisborne. Unfortunately, we've been unable to marry our times up, but we will in fact provide that in due course. Our focus is in regard to purely public transport and in respect to a plea from our students who are based in our smaller communities for consideration by Council to support the provision of public transport to, particularly from Wairoa to Gisborne and equally from Central Hawke's Bay through to Hastings Napier. As a Central Hawke's Bay based student myself, I can assure you that there are, as I'm sure Councillor Taylor will contest, an increasing number of vehicles from our growing community early in the morning. Now, my fellow board members have done a very unscientific straw poll amongst their various classes, and that's both within trades, social sciences and so forth. And many of our CHB students in particular going to the Taradale campus are keen to see some sort of provision of public transport. A number of reasons for that, cost obviously being one of them. I'm not here to plead the case of poor students, but it is a bit of a stretch, as I'm sure I know with our colleagues based in Wairoa as well. But there is certainly a very strong consciousness amongst the student body in regard to the environmental impact of regular motor vehicle movements, and particularly reflecting on how our classes sometimes don't gel and therefore are a barrier to carpooling. A number of colleagues and students are well aware that one person in a vehicle travelling 70 odd k's from Waipukurau through to Taradale is not a particularly efficient use of those resources. So there's a bit of a broader view of the student body there. Our plea, apart from consideration of a public transport provision for not only the student body but also our wider communities obviously, is for United as the representative political body of EIT students in the greater East Coast to have the opportunity to work in partnership with Council around what some sort of provision may in fact look like. I'd now like to pass the talking stick to my colleague Jade, just to give you a bit of an idea of the increased pressure post-COVID.
Yeah, so kia ora tātou. Despite COVID closing borders and no new international students coming through, we've actually had an increase in student numbers in Hawke's Bay and our campus up in Tairāwhiti, Gisborne, which is fantastic. However, I am seeing an increase as well in student welfare queries, budgeting and study link. Just this morning, we had 3 separate nursing students come to us asking if we gave away free petrol vouchers. And so obviously with this increased need, increased in student body across all the regional learning centres, which includes Hastings, Maraenui, Ruatoria, Gisborne and Waipakaro. With that, the greater student numbers, we do have a greater student need. So we're really keen to work with the council to see what we can do to kind of alleviate that issue.
Lovely. Thank you, Jade.
So I think your message is quite clear and straightforward. Public transport options from Central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa into, and particularly servicing the likes of EIT as a means to achieve greater equity of access for students in particular. That's the nub of it.
In a nutshell.
That seems like a fairly unarguable proposition in some respects, doesn't it? So thank you. If any of my committee members,
yeah. So you mentioned from Wairoa to Gisborne, which is, yep, I totally get that. How about like a bus service that would take the kids first thing Monday morning and bring them home Friday night, or the students from this end, because there's quite a few people come to Wairoa down here.
Absolutely.
And it's just that getting to stay, it's quite expensive for them, and they do come home anyway on the weekends, a lot of them.
Yes, this is more anecdotal than having the actual numbers with me, but our median age for our students is about 25, and a lot of them have part-time jobs and families. So I couldn't tell you exactly how large the call is for week-long stays, but it's something that I could certainly ask about.
Mr. Chair,
yes, Councillor Lamb.
checked out a comparison between what Gisborne are doing, what they've done in the past, the transport from Wairoa to Gisborne?
Not at this stage, no.
Really, no. But we do have an office space there, so I can check.
Oh yeah, well they use the van daily.
I missed the question, sorry. I was getting tapped on both shoulders at once.
10 minutes up, yeah.
Yeah. Right, so your question was answered, so thank you. Councillor Taylor, my apologies.
In your written submission, you mentioned while carpooling is encouraged, not all daily timetables mar up, and hence it is our view that a regular and reliable bus service would be of value. How regular, how reliable? Any thoughts on what should or could be thought about there?
Yeah, look, absolutely. What we're finding is that some of the classes can be literally within curi of each other, half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. And so often we find that can be a point of disagreement amongst students, because it means someone who needs to go through early and study and so forth. I think if there was a regular set timetable, and I realise that may look something different from what we currently operate, which I think is worth certainly exploring given what the Hastings District Council has recently submitted as well, that would allow students to actually factor in, if they need to travel through 2 hours earlier, then the opportunity to study in the library and so forth. I think whilst we've been endeavouring very hard to encourage carpooling, the irregularity at times can cause a lot of unnecessary angst.
In terms of, I think Councillor Taylor's question was more how regular and reliable would the bus service need to be to replace the current?
So the majority of our courses start around 8:39 in the morning, run through to 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The bulk of them do, yeah. What I would say as well, though, if we were able to look at potentially expanding that, then it would grow the opportunities for students to consider later courses, and in fact a number of our campuses also provide early evening courses as well.
And what sort of numbers are we talking in terms of percentage of students at EIT Taradale, for example, would be from Central Hawke's Bay or Wairoa?
Those
Are we
are the
gonna fill the
numbers we're
bus?
currently working on, sorry.
Right. Could
Sorry.
those be provided when available? Because
Yep,
we need
absolutely.
to know that the demand's there. You know,
Yep.
I mean, you're telling us it is, but it'd be good to have the numerics for the modelling.
We had hoped to have actually tabled that today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, did we not get some stats from someone that submitted last time? They spoke anecdotally and then emailed later? No? Rings a bell in the back of my head. but
We
it's-
asked for them and they were going to provide them.
Yes,
Oh.
that's right.
And they
That
did.
was from EIT.
I think they're the statistics that they're still working on to provide to us.
Right, that was from
Thank you.
EIT,
Sorry.
wasn't it?
We shall. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
Lovely.
Any other questions?
Thank you all.
No? Well, we 30 seconds to spare. I have a funny feeling that, Matt, are your team there now?
Indisposed, but should be here in a moment.
All right, well, we shall proceed then with the Wairoa District Council, 5 minutes.
Oh, so I've got 10 minutes. I'll do it from here. I don't think we need to. It's very quick to it. Hey, look, I'd just like to first of all acknowledge the great work that everyone who's worked on the plan, putting it together. We believe it catches Wairoa's needs, and we're strongly urging the Wairoa District to keep the forefront of these plans moving forward. We'd like to acknowledge Oliver and his team. Unfortunately, Oliver's not here today. On the great work they're doing on the State Highway 2, and that's particularly the Taranui dropout and the Roponga widening that was probably due to drop into the river any time. So those projects are really important, but continually passing lanes are really important too, that we just keep. We do not have enough passing lanes, so that's, you just talk to everybody, you travel that road, and that's what we need. The road out to Mahia, there's been a lot of support there. We continue to support that. The blowhole does need to be done because it will end up dropping into the sea if we don't do something there. State Highway 38, obviously, they keep that conversation going. It's been going forever, and it's pretty frustrating. I know that there's a lot of work being done from the Minister Stuart Nash's office, so let's hope that he comes up with something good, because it's very frustrating for us. We do have concerns with the proposed cuts to funding from NZTA or Waka Kotahi. So yeah, we're really urging that this funding be expanded rather than reduced. As nothing gets less and less, it gets more and more. So yeah, and I'd just like to support the submissions from the Wairoa crew, and you've got Sonia Smith this morning. I'd like to support the Eastern Transport Initiatives group that's supporting later on in the day. Also Guy Wellwood and Graham Carroll on the rail corridor. It's open to Wairoa whether you like it or not, so they might as well open it to Gisborne as well. And that's pretty well me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Do you have any questions? No. Are there other committee members who...
I'd like to ask a few questions.
I don't think that's how it works. But in all seriousness, have we got any other... I mean, it's a very clear, straightforward proposition. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the EITG group this afternoon. It's an incredibly important issue for the region. We get that, and we get that in spades. So it's a question of what we're going to do about it. That's a matter for deliberations. So thank you for reminding us of the importance of all parts of the region. Councillor Kerr.
Just one question, Mayor Little. If we were to highlight or push the button on one project, what would that one be?
Oh, look, yeah, we don't do one projects. We like to, because otherwise we'll miss out on...
Okay.
That's a really hard question. I think we've probably had a lot of neglect and we need a bit of catching up. The State Highway 838 is pretty important, but so is getting access out to Mahia, and then a lot more people probably rely on that access at the moment, but it drops away. So it's a very hard question. Can you just get them all for us and we'll be wrapped? Yeah.
If you focus it on State Highway 2, would the priority be Devil's Elbow?
State Highway 2 is the absolute priority of the passing lanes.
Yeah, okay, generally.
Safety.
All right. Councillor Taylor.
But the two priorities that the first submitter said about the Devil's Elbow and flooding at Tutera, how would they be?
Well, you're never going to stop a weather event on the roads that we travel, because that's, so I think passing lanes whilst the road's open, and hopefully the Eastern Transport Initiative Group might have some ideas for us when they present.
Yes. Looking forward to hearing about that. All right, thank you very much, Me Little. I'm going to now call on, I believe, Mr. Broderick and Ms. Flintoff. And who else have we got? You'd all just come up and introduce yourselves anyway.
That was the plan.
And you've heard how this works. You've got a 10-minute slot. We've read your submission. It's really the opportunity to make sure we take away the key messages from that submission that we want to ensure that we have firmly in mind when we come to our deliberations. We'll try and ask questions within the 10-minute slot. Welcome. Your time starts now. Okay.
Oh, kia ora everyone. My name's Kelly Enand, and I'm here in my role as Chair of Matariki 2.4D.
Hey, my name is Ave Whakaosi. I'm here to support the team, and I'm here also to represent as the voice of Pacific here in Hawke's Bay. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Kia ora, and my name is Matt Broderick. I'm the Road Policing Manager, and also here to support this initiative, which is across all the region, from Wairoa right down to our southern boundaries in Waiwhakaurau.
So obviously Matariki 2.4D was an action that was established after the Matariki Regional Development Strategy. It was one of the core actions. We actually see ourselves as the driver licensing as a bit of a glue that holds all those actions together. So our, I guess, mandate and our goal is to increase the number of whānau with driver licences to ensure more whānau have access to and are eligible for employment. We're a group of people from across the region. We're all from all different spaces and places and different people that we work with, and we meet together every 6 weeks to be able to sort of work out our key priorities and some of the key actions that we want to do within the region. And you'll see in that circle diagram there that we want to be a catalyst to break the cycles of inequity, create safe licensed drivers, work-ready, employed, productive and legal, and high economic productivity through fair access, good training and full driver licences.
Okay.
Do this one.
There's a mouse there.
Okay. And we believe that by working together we can make a difference. As well as safer roads, we need safer drivers on them. So we can have all the wonderful barriers and roads on the planet, but if we haven't got the people that are driving safely on them, then it can be a bit of a recipe for disaster. We've got many amazing local actions. Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay both have a coordinated response to driver licensing and driving initiatives and safety. This was largely born out of the fact that we didn't really have testing availability in our own communities, so the community had to pick up that response, and it's certainly working for both of those communities. Napier and Hastings have some school programs and community organisations that have specific programs. So the local actions are linked to the regional actions, which is what we call Matariki 2.4D. We're partners across the region working together. We all have mixed goals. But we all want equity, we all want employment, health, crime prevention and access, and licensing is the common need, and we see as a real change point within that work. And of course we also then link to a national body of work which is called Driving Change, and that's a network that was, I guess, birthed out of the role of Mayor's Task Force for Jobs some years ago, and is working with the philanthropy Todd Foundation, and we're trying to get a systems change and working with government around policies, resourcing, systems change and adding driver training and licensing to the school curriculum. So you can see that even though this is a regional action, we're connected to community but also connected nationally, and it's quite an exciting place to be.
There's a lot of issues around the driver licensing with our Pacific people and also refugees, people that come from other countries to New Zealand, and I think the barrier there is the language. You know, to come here to New Zealand is a different country, and the language is huge. So, and that's what we've experienced with, because I've been doing the course for our Pacific people for a few years, and that's the barriers that I've experienced is the language, especially with the road code. There's no road code in Samoan or any other language except for English, and that's why we need to have people, our own people, to deliver the program to our own people in our own language, you know, Pacific by Pacific, you know, because I know there are other programs available that run by Māori and English, but our people can't even go there because of that barrier. They can't even understand the English language. And I think some of the issues that we face here is the financial side of things, because a lot of our families are low income and they can't afford to go and get their license because, you know, there's not enough money. They rather put that money aside for put food on the table instead of getting the license. So, and I know from experience, last year one of our family ended up with the police because they had an argument because the woman wanted to do her license. So she went and sit the test, but she failed. So she came back and told the husband, and then the husband was just about, you know, it was in a family violence there. So it's not just a problem just for the license, but they come out with all other issues as well. And I know with the system that we've got now from NCTA, there's tests already translated in different languages, but like for me as a Samoan, when I read those translations, I don't understand because I don't know the translation. It looks like they do it word for word, which is some of the things that it doesn't make sense for us. And that's a huge problem. And we've been raising this with NCTA, and I hope one day they're going to listen to us and change the system on how they do things for us to be able to understand. And that's why, and it's hard to get interpreters. All the interpreters work full-time. But if there's no one available there to help with the language, then there we go. You know, people will just continue on with driving with no license, and they end up in court, and they end up where I work now in the prison, you know, spend some time there. And that's the thing, it's very sad for me to see our own Pacific people end up in jail just because they didn't have a license, and they don't understand the laws around the driver licensing as well. Thank you.
So that's the that's some of the examples of how we want to be a catalyst to break the cycles of inequity in the driver licensing system.
So if I can try and provide the link for that, this is a regional land transport meeting, and the purpose of the strategy is heavily linked towards the engineering and development side of the world, but actually it's a safe system that we're after, not just an engineering solution or things that we want to spend money on to improve the roads and stuff. The safe system critically involves the people who use that system. And if there is a large proportion or a significant proportion of those people who use that system that are not adequately skilled to use that system, then we will have what we had last year. And for Eastern District Police, that meant that 32 people lost their lives on the road, and 132 were seriously injured. Now, that's for Eastern District, which includes Tairāwhiti, but for Hawke's Bay, that meant 19 fatals and 84 serious injury crashes. And that was in the year of COVID, when we didn't have the amount of volumes on the road that we would normally have. And what's significant about that is that a vast majority of them, 15 of the fatals, are in breach of a graduated driving licence scheme. Okay. And a good proportion of those were not actually licensed at all. So 31 of those people in the serious injury category were also in breach of those graduated driver licensing. So from a safety point of view, you could see where the police would be really interested, since we're supposed to be protecting the community. We've got a great deal of them that are not adequately trained. So they come to our contact at the side of the road when they're not dying on the road, and we actually get a chance to have a conversation with them. We need to be in a position where we can do some sort of preventative activity other than a purely punitive action. And that means that we've got to be in a position to assist those people through other routes, through the likes of AVE, through the likes of the programme that Kelly is running, and refer them and assist them to get adequately trained in that system.
Okay, and work ready, employed, productive, legal. So, like I said before, language is the most difficult thing for our people. But I do believe if our people have the right license to drive, there will be more opportunities for them to get employment, because it will be a lot easier. And a lot of our people just, at the moment, just stay on their learners. Soon they get their learners, they sort of stay there. Because most of our drivers instructor, AA and VTN, said they are Palangis, European, but we're so grateful that last year we were able, with the help and the financial support from the regional council, that we were, and also Matariki 2.4, they were able to pay for the course for me and another Tongan lady to do the driver licensing, the course, to become qualified. And it's a huge achievement for our Pacific, because now we can take our people, legally can take them to teach them how to drive, show them what are the things that they mark them on when they go for the restricted and full. In my own language, they understand, because they can't go, with someone, a European, because of the barrier is the language. But it's so grateful. I acknowledge that support, financial support from here as well, and all our organisations.
Well, thank you very much. And as a member of the Driver Licensing Governance Group, I'm acutely aware that one of the biggest social dividends we can make through any investment in our transport system is driver licensing. So thank you for all the mahi you do in that area. Now, Councillor Curry, you have a question.
Quick question following up from your comment. I know we already invest in this space. Are you asking us to essentially invest more so we can achieve more and access more, get more drivers fully licensed?
Yeah, I mean, people always think of investment as financial, but we've got it in a page there of some of the things that you can do. Often we work in isolation, and I don't know that there's enough cross-strategizing going along, that, one strategy actually feeds into the other. So that's why I guess we're here today, to be able to make sure that you guys are actually considering driver licensing as a core component of road safety and road users, so that we're not just doing our thing, and we also need to consider your strategy when we're actually doing our work. So I think that's one thing that really is important across the region, that we start doing that, and helping us to celebrate our success. And the other thing is advocacy and working with NZTA to be able to advocate and work on our behalf, because you guys can have conversations with them that we can't always have. And I guess help promote driver training, advocate to government for our systems change that is so needed. It is needed. And I guess it's also about supporting actions to improve access to training and looking at resources. And one of the things that we would love to see considered is looking at the funding of simulators for the region, because technology has a huge part to play in helping people being able to become safer on our roads, and I don't think we actually do that and use that enough.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll take one more question, and then we need to move, I think, either to our next submitter. What's that?
It'll be quick. Hey, Kelly, there's a really good presentation. Kelly, the biggest thing for Wire and CHP is not having that driver's licence facility to be able to get your licences in our towns.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about this for how many years now? And what have we achieved? Every one of you guys are doing all this great work behind, so basically we're just trying to fix what the NZTA took away from us. So how can we somehow, I'm probably going to ask Martin as well as you, but perhaps to put this on the top of our prioritisation list to get those testing facilities back into our little towns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is that it's all done on stats and data. That's how NZTA play. They love all that, and so basically it's about traffic volumes, it's about roundabouts, it's about people. It was not even about traffic lights. It's about volumes and being able to.
But it's flawed, because someone gets their licence in Wairau, and my children particularly, and I'm more worried about them driving from Wairau
Yeah,
to
that's
Hawke's
right.
Bay on that bloody road.
So one of the things that we've identified from a local council perspective is that we actually need to be working in our 3 to 5, 10-year plans and going, right, what is in our roads? What are some of the things that we need to be doing when we actually consider changing the camber of the road or changing the dynamics or doing things like in Central Hawke's Bay, for example, we don't have many stop signs. So one of the things that we need to do from a local government perspective is actually start working stop signs into our longer term plan for our roads, so that when our children go to Tararua to sit their licence, they're not learning something new, they've experienced it every single day. So we may not ever get testing back in our communities, but we can do stuff.
Sorry, Martin, I know you're on top.
yeah.
But I just want to say, you're never going to get enough things to be experienced driver, because as soon as you leave Napier and head up to Auckland, you're going to learn a lot more.
That's so true.
So you're never going to get there. The experience does that for you, and this is what these guys, NZTA, have to realise.
All right, well, we've got that on the priority list, and I'm taking a very careful and deliberate note about what is. So I think that's a very valid point. Thank you again for all of the work you do, particularly within the Samoan community. That's absolutely gold. So please do keep it up, and we'll support you as best we can in this context. Now, we've got an option here. I see we have Mayor Walker here, who I'm assuming wishes to speak for Central Hawke's Bay. We could either hear from you now, or we could take the scheduled afternoon tea break. We've all been sitting here for 2 hours. Mayor Walker, are you able to wait for 15 minutes before we hear you? Or, all right, you may have fresher and more attentive committee members than ones crossing their legs. So, all right. Well, 15-minute break. Come back at 3:45. Thank you. Good.